Good evening from New York. I am Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS Journeys. Welcome to another edition. My guest this evening is Dr. Avis Jones DeWeever. She's an exceptional leadership strategist, diversity expert, and author of the book How Exceptional Black Women Lead. She recently served as the youngest top executive officer of a major national membership organization, reaching 4 million women in the US and around the world, and is currently the founding president and CEO of Insight Unlimited, a top Washington, D.C. consulting firm which regularly engages with the White House as well as key leaders and organizations in the U.S. and around the globe. She's also the founder of the Exceptional Leadership Institute for Women, where she helps dedicated and highly capable women pierce through gender or cultural barriers in order to move further, faster in their professions or in business while also building a home life that they love. Ladies and gentlemen, the beautiful woman next to me is Dr. Avis Jones DeWeever. Dr. DeWeever, good evening and welcome to CWS.
Thank you for having me. So happy to be here.
Glad to have you. Dr. DeWeever, you are a diversity expert, an international speaker, and an author,
Yes.
but you're also a career reinvention strategist.
Yes.
What would you tell us what is it exactly you do in that capacity?
Absolutely. So, I believe that we go through different cycles in our lives. I think that we set off on a path when we're young and we go to college bright eyed and bushy tailed, or sometimes we don't go to college, but we sort of dig into a career that we make, a choice that we make very early in life. And I think as we get a little bit of maturity along with us, as we begin to sort of actually marinate a bit in this thing that we call life, sometimes we come to know ourselves a little bit better with time, and we come to develop new passions, new interests, new desires. But we don't really quite know how to make that shift from where we originally committed ourselves in our careers to where we know our souls want us to go in terms of our natural abilities, our proclivities, what's really of interest to us in the here and now. And so I help people to be able to make that shift strategically and in a way that's destined for success so they can live their lives in the center of their brilliance and in the center of their passions.
You mentioned where our souls want to go. How important is intuition and someone, well, we're talking about women this evening, having the ability and courage to pay attention and listen to their intuition?
I think that's key. I think it's there for a reason. I think that we all have that sort of little voice inside of us, or at least that feeling.
Hmm.
You know sometimes when something just doesn't feel right. And I've had experiences in my life where I've sort of opened myself up to opportunities, whether it be a career decision or a personal decision, where it doesn't kind of feel exactly right, but you kind of ignore it, you kind of push it to the side, you think you can make it fit, you try to spit that square peg into the round hole, and then you wonder why it doesn't fit. Well, the bottom line is you didn't really listen to that intuition that you had. And so I think it's a gift. And I think that the more that we begin to listen to that little inner voice and that feeling that we have, I think the better it is for us to be able to create a life that is in line with what we really want and really what is aligned with what is meant for us, for our purpose and where in the direction that we should be going within.
Since your last visit on CWS Journeys, you have since completed this book, How Exceptional Black. I, oh man, you know, since you've just shown us that entry, what was it like finishing that book? How did you feel when it was
Man,
completed?
I've never ran a marathon, and maybe I need to after this experience because I imagine that's how you feel when you finish a marathon. This is an idea that first came to me about 3 years ago. And it's one of those things where, you know it's a great idea, but it's not one of those things that's going to happen overnight. So you just commit to it and you keep plugging away. The idea was, around that time, everybody was talking about this book, Lean In, a very famous book written by Sheryl Sandberg,
Hmm.
right? From Facebook, the CEO of Facebook.
Yeah.
And the name of the book is Lean In. And I read the book, and I have to tell you, I was very I was very disappointed in the book because I felt like her experience was not my experience. Her main argument in the book is that women oftentimes don't achieve their ultimate potential in their careers because they don't really own their seat at the table. They don't really lean into their careers. They don't really commit to their careers. But if they did, then they would do better in the workplace. And I know as a Black woman that that's not my story. I know that for Black women, oftentimes, whether or not we work is not a choice. It is a necessity. And we've always been in the workforce, particularly here in America. We built this place, right? So we've never had a time where we didn't work, but we've still found ourselves in situations where we haven't really advanced in the workplace to the degree that we want to and that we're capable of. And so something was there that was holding us back, that wasn't really allowing us to ascend to leadership, that had nothing to do with whether or not we decided to lean in. We are fully committed to the workforce. All of the surveys that I've seen on the subject suggest that Black women are the most ambitious demographic group in the workforce. We're more likely to want a promotion than a white woman or a white man. Okay, so we're there and we want to lead. But something is inhibiting our path because when you look at the statistics around it, we are woefully underrepresented in leadership positions across the spectrum in terms of all the different types of career opportunities that exist. And so what I decided to do was to interview a number of exceptionally successful Black women who had achieved leadership positions in a variety of fields in corporate America and nonprofit America, women who are public servants, women who are even exceptionally successful entrepreneurs, and really try to tease out from them some patterns that I could find that might suggest a way in which we might be able to achieve success as Black women, to be able to successfully navigate both the challenges of race and gender in the workplace so that we could achieve success while also creating a holistic life that we love. Because personally, in my view, having career success alone is not fully success. To have a life that, to me, is reflective of 360 degrees of success requires also that you create a home life that you love as well. And so the book really looks at both sides of that coin and shares pearls of wisdom from amazing women that I've spoken to across the spectrum.
I understand what inspired you. But along the journey, what kept you going? Did you ever feel like stopping?
No, I mean, this was a passion project. This was something that I absolutely could not put down. I've been working on this for over 2 years now. I'm a researcher by training. So I love doing research. I know how to do it. And I love especially doing research on Black women because I feel like there's not enough of that out there. So it was something that I was committed to. In fact, I exceeded my original goal. My original goal was to interview 50 women. And I have to tell you, I just kept running across and getting opportunities to interview so many different amazing women. I couldn't stop myself. And I ended up exceeding my goal before I even realized how far I had surpassed it. And I went back and counted again, and I was at like nearly 70 women. So I was like, well, let me just get a few more in here and I can get 70. So I went further than I originally intended to go. As Toni Morrison said, this is the book that I wanted to read that wasn't there. And so I decided to write it myself.
As you interviewed these amazing women, these exceptional Black women, what was one common thread among them?
A couple of different things. I would say one major one is they each had what I identify in the book as a critical leadership mindset. And there are several components of that, but the one area that I think is probably most important is they have what some researchers suggest as a growth mindset. There's been some research, some psychological research around how we think. And it basically says that people are generally divided into two categories. There are those of us who have a growth mindset, and there are those of us who have a limited mindset. And those with a limited mindset, basically, you believe those types of individuals, those types of personalities, I would say, believe that you are born with a certain set of traits and abilities when you first come to this earth. And when they are faced with a challenging situation, something that they don't really know a lot about, something that they're not naturally good at, they tend to shrink away from those sorts of situations because it makes them feel like they can't do it. They just assume that if it doesn't come easy to them, that they just must not be smart enough, or they must not be talented enough. And so they just think they can't do it. And so rather than push through the uncomfortable nature that is associated with perhaps trying something initially and not being good at it or failing at it, God forbid, that they just sort of ignore those types of situations, pull themselves out of those situations, and stay limited to those situations that they do have a natural proclivity to. Okay? That's sort of the limited mindset. Mm-hmm. These women, to a person, I would describe as having a growth mindset. And that type of person is not frightened or is not at all turned off by new opportunities, by new situations, by new things that they are not at all familiar with, that they don't know how to do it right the first time, that they might in fact fail, okay? But what they do instead is that they dig in their heels and they are determined to figure out how to get it right. They're determined to figure out how to overcome that obstacle, and they keep going at it and going at it and going at it until they figure it out and become good at it, you know. And so they're not intimidated by the unknown. Mm-hmm. And that to me is one key differentiating factor with these women, and I think a lot of other folks. And I think it's one of those explanatory factors as to how they got to where they were, because at every step along the way, it's not like they went into that new opportunity understanding from A to Z how to be good at whatever that was, but they went into that new opportunity knowing that they had the ability to figure out how to do it, and they were determined to figure out how to do it and ultimately grow their skill set so that they could do it well. So I hate to use that phrase, but it's leaning into new opportunities with confidence in yourself and your abilities to learn what you need to learn to be able to flourish in those new opportunities.
I like that. When did they know exactly why you were interviewing them?
Oh, yes.
And what was some of the reaction when they found out?
So people were very open and very kind, and first of all, they were happy that someone was doing this. I also think in another sense, they probably maybe were a little flattered because, I would say that oftentimes a lot of Black women who excel, we don't even hear about them. Most of the time, we don't even know their names, and I think that there needs to be more. That's actually another motivating factor for why I wanted to do this book. Is because I wanted to elevate some of these women who are out here doing amazing things that most people don't know who they are. And I think it gave them the ability to be able to come out from behind the curtains and be able to shine a little bit and to be able to show the world how amazing they are. And I think to some extent there was a little bit of flattery in there, but also there was this desire to take their experience, their knowledge, their know-how, and generously give it to the next generation of aspiring Black women leaders so they don't necessarily have to feel as many bumps and have to experience as many bruises as they had to on their way to the top.
Yeah. I was going to ask you why you wrote this book before, but I mean, you've made the case for that.
Yes.
Why do you believe that the average woman can have it all?
Because I think we already do. I think that's the secret. I make this argument in my book. The secret to having it all is understanding that you already have it all. But the question is, what does your all look like? What sort of life do you want to create for yourself? Is your all reflective of your deepest desires? And if it isn't, then that tells you what you need to work on to get it there. One of the things that I think is true for high achieving individuals, and I've been guilty of it myself in my life, is that, sometimes we can get so fixated and focused on hitting that next career goal, and we are willing to strategize and deconstruct and prepare ourselves and get all credentialed up and do everything that we need to do to hit that goal, but we don't put the same level of attention and intention into our personal life goals. Mm-hmm. it took me a little time as to come to the level of maturity to understand that you have to be just as intentional about your personal life as you are about your professional life. You can't just expect it all to sort of happen when you are willing to devote years of study and daily activity and focus into getting your career where you want to go. And then you expect to just come home and everything to be all, perfect. You have to put a little bit of effort in that. You have to put effort in that too, planning and effort in that too. And I'm not saying it should feel like work, but you need to position yourself such that you can create the life that you want instead of expecting it to happen to you. You have to go out and make it happen in the same way that you have to make it happen in the professional world as well.
How would you describe an exceptional woman?
So an exceptional woman, and I would be very specific because my book is about exceptional Black women. Exceptional Black women.
Yes, sorry about that.
That's okay. And the reason why I'm making that distinction is because we do have a very distinct experience in this country. I know when I was first thinking about writing this book and I connected with a literary agent and we were having some of our initial conversations, she suggested that I might want to expand this a little bit, because I was telling her this is to juxtapose against the whole lean in phenomenon. And she was thinking, well, maybe I should expand this to women of color. And I told her then maybe for a future book, but this book is going to focus on Black women because we have a very, very distinct experience in this country. And I believe it deserves a very specific analysis. But in terms of an exceptional Black woman, I think it is someone who knows herself, knows her heritage. And to me, that is the root of it all. Because when you know yourself, know your history, know your heritage, you have a certain grounding and a certain strength, and you develop a certain love of you that makes you exceptional, that makes you extraordinary and out of the ordinary. And people, you can see it. I mean, I think people who have come to that level of enlightenment about themselves and their history, they exude it. They walk with a sense of confidence. They carry themselves with a sense of pride. They set boundaries around themselves in terms of what is and what is not acceptable in terms of how other people address them and how other people all interact with them. And all of those things create a reality for yourself that is bound to be exceptional, that just has no other choice but to be exceptional.
What is it like when you meet an exceptional Black woman and she recognizes the same in you?
Yeah.
What is that like?
I'm gaming, right? So, it's wonderful. That's a sister friend. I mean, it's like some women, honestly, I have some amazing sister friends who, it's one of those things where you just click and you connect and you want to be there for that person and you want to lift up that person and you want to celebrate them because, generally speaking, I will tell you that our culture is one in the larger sense that wants to be us, but they denigrate us in the same instance. And what I mean by that is, for example, you look at before and after pictures of a Kylie Jenner, for example, or, any of those, a lot of folks.
Yes.
And you'll see that popular culture is particularly for other women, for example, is to take on the physical appearance of Black women. But at the same time, Black women, authentic Black women, are oftentimes degraded or denigrated or disrespected around who we actually are. And so when you connect with a sister who is not at all shaken by that, who knows that she is the ish, for example,
yes,
but not in a conceited way, but in a way in which she just is filled with self-knowledge, self-love, and self-pride. It's an immediate mutual respect there, and it's an immediate desire to lift the other up. I just think it's a mutually strengthening experience. It's like an iron sharpened iron type of experience.
And you said that when she knows who she is and she's comfortable with who she is and she knows her history. And this is very important to
Yes,
have that confidence.
absolutely.
Hmm.
I think history is a critical part of that. And I have to say, my book goes into that a bit. And I think, it's not your traditional business book. I will say that. It wouldn't be me if it didn't go there, because that's a big part of who I am. And so I talk about, how we got here in America. I talk about just the human travesty and just what the triangle slave trade meant to us. The fact that it literally was the kidnapping of millions of Africans, millions of whom remains are still on the bottom of the ocean today. Just the tragedy of all of that. The violence that's been associated with our experience in America, not only generally as Black people, obviously, but also specifically as Black women, when we were brought here in a society where slavery was passed down maternally. And so when you have a system in which slaves are considered financial assets, as slave owners, you are able to increase your holdings by raping the women. All right. Mm. So there is a reason why we're so many colors here as African Americans. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so, I talk about all of that, and I talk about the residue of that on us to this day. There are psychological residue that's associated with having experienced the type of terrorism that we have experienced in this country for centuries, and that in many ways we continue to experience. If you look at what's going on right now with the Black Lives Matter movement, that is a reaction to, I would call, a terrorist terrorist state, basically, when you're talking about the police perpetuating the terrorism. Mm-hmm. I talk about the psychological residue that's associated with that. There's been a lot of research around that, mm-hmm. and specifically to the point where there's some research that suggests that it actually impacts your DNA. Some research that's looked at, and I don't know why they didn't include Black people in this study. And I, in fact, reached out to the author of the study to ask her why she didn't. And of course, she didn't respond. But mm-hmm. They did study descendants of the Holocaust, and they studied descendants of people who survived the 9/11 attacks here in America. And what they found was that their children actually, to the cellular level, had different types. Their DNA was actually impacted, was different than other children whose foreparents did not experience those traumas. Mm. They ultimately found out that those children themselves exhibited symptoms of post-traumatic stress syndrome, even though they themselves did not experience those terrorizing activities, but their parents did. And what I'm arguing in the book is that we have experienced centuries of terrorism in this country. If you think of 1964 Civil Rights Act, for example, and the 1965 Voting Rights Act as the beginning of litigious freedom in this country for Black people, that means that we've only been at least somewhat free in this country for 50 years, even though we've been here for 400 years.
And that's not a long time at all.
It's not a long time at all. And so that has residue. It has a residue on how you navigate a world mm-hmm. that has terrorized your forefathers for centuries.